O Rockbox, O Rockbox, how I am indebted to thee. Such charm and grace inspires me with wonder and awe. Rockbox is simple, easy, and yet dastardly complex. Rockbox brings doom to the strangest of places, and yet it also brings a smile. Rockbox is the source of my ambition. The year was 2006, and the world was a different place. Cell phones were not smartphones. The compact disc was still king, but anyone who was anyone had an MP3 player. Some MP3 players were tiny, with memory measured in megabytes. Others had miniature hard drives, ripe for breaking. Rockbox was well established, but was still largely unknown, a sort of mythical, esoteric alternative firmware for MP3 players that improved them somehow. If you were a teenager back then, you may have spotted, at the back of the class, a very cool kid playing Pokemon on their iPod. Because aside from all the fantastic features it brought, almost as an afterthought, Rockbox came with a Game Boy emulator. The year was 2010, and the age of the MP3 player was drawing to a close. Smartphones had arrived, and although music streaming was not really established until later, most smartphones could happily replace your music player. But around this time, or slightly before then, came the peak of MP3 hardware. I often find that cheap, simple products released towards the end of an era represent the pinnacle of their development. Mass-produced, whittled down to the very simplest and best features. In the case of MP3 players, one such example is the SanDisk Sansa Clip. It's tiny, has excellent battery life, and the micro SD card slot means that limited memory is no longer an issue. I never bought one when it came out because at the time I was still rocking the Nokia N900, but little did I know that the Sansa Clip would far outlive my spectacular Linux phone. It was only a while later, when I spotted one in a pawn shop for £3, about $5, that I nabbed a Sansa Clip for myself. It's perhaps because it was so cheap that I felt no inhibition about trying Rockbox on it. And never before or since has my mind been quite so blown. The install process was unbelievably simple. I just plugged in the USB cable, and their software detected the model of MP3 player and flashed the new firmware onto it. I'm informed that powering it on while holding a button combination will launch the stock firmware, but I have never been inclined to do so. Just as an example, because I cannot possibly list all of its features, the original Sansa Clip does not support capless playback of tracks. The original designers of the product simply deemed it to be too difficult to implement. Rockbox laughs at such a suggestion, and supports gapless playback without batting an eyelid. If this was the only thing that Rockbox did, the only possible benefit that Rockbox brought to the table, that alone would make Rockbox worth having. It's an understatement to say that this left an impression on me, but what really got me thinking was the fact that nobody else seemed fazed by it. The achievement, in my mind, was monumental, almost magical, and the question I couldn't stop asking was, how would I even begin? How would you do it? Where do you even start to produce a magic alternative firmware that outperforms the best that even the real product designers could come up with? I asked a lot of people. I remember I once spoke to someone with a degree in computer science, and I asked them, Rockbox, where would you even begin? And his response was, you would start by having a degree in electrical engineering. It seems that embedded firmware is a very grey area. The electrical engineers consider it too much like software, and the software engineers consider it too much like electronics. There must be someone out there who doesn't think of it as witchcraft. The year is now 2021, and at some point in the last 10 years, I think I did get the answer to my question. If you asked me to make my own version of Rockbox, I think I possibly could, but only because I've spent years and years and years trying to figure out how. My entire fascination with embedded firmware was born from being amazed by Rockbox. My Sansa Clip is still going strong and still rocking Rockbox. It's been all over the world with me, has seen thousands of hours of use, and is a strong contender for the best £3 I ever spent. And every time I use it, I think of Rockbox, and I wonder if I would ever have started my bare metal journey if Rockbox hadn't convinced me that miracles are possible.